Creating custom Pokemon for you! Welcome back, everyone, to the show where we select lucky commenters to spin a series of random wheels that give us factors for a Pokemon that we then create just for you. It's gonna be a super fun episode today, y'all. We have 4 amazing custom Pokemon as always, but before we get started, I do have some quick reminders. First of all, if you end up liking today's episode, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And of course, if you want a custom Pokemon, all you have to do is leave a comment under this video because I'll be randomly selecting people from this video's comments for the next episode. Everyone who gets a custom Pokemon is just randomly selected from the comments. It's just most fair that way, but it also makes it way more important to subscribe with the notification bell turned on because you need to see the episode to know that you got one, so subscribe now. And without further ado, let's get into the first Pokemon. And this one will be for Lux 7. I'm glad you like the lore of all the Pokemon. So alright, Lux, let's start by getting the power level of your Pokemon, and you are going to be regular. There's nothing wrong with that. Now let's see how many times your Pokemon can evolve, and you are going to get 1, which makes you a 2-stage evolution line. Now let's see what typing your Pokemon's going to be. Your first type is going to be the Ghost type. That is awesome. That is one of my favorite types to make designs for, and Ghost Psychic is actually really interesting. And the last step, before we see what your Pokemon looks like, let's see if it has an X Factor, and you do! A Mega Evolution. That is absolutely awesome. That's my favorite mechanic of all time, so it's always super hype when we get one of those. Your Pokemon is Vanitum, the Reflection Pokemon. This Pokemon can often be found in abandoned hotels, waiting for narcissistic Pokemon to watch themselves in its reflection. At which point, Vanitum shows them a false reality in its glass where the Pokemon's biggest desires come true, all the while stealing their soul as they struggle to look away, trapping them forever, or at least until its glass is broken. At level 25, it would evolve into Reflectome. This Pokemon is so powerful from stealing souls that it's able to warp reality around it, confusing the opponent before unleashing devastating elemental attacks from its reflection. However, while this Pokemon is incredibly powerful, it does have a glaring weakness. You see, because this Pokemon's power comes from its reflections, it's actually unable to see or attack from the rear. So if you're able to attack this Pokemon from the back, it will be completely defenseless. When exposed to Reflectite, it would evolve into Mega Reflectome. Upon achieving Mega Evolution, this Pokemon's power was so great that its glass couldn't contain it and it shattered into several pieces. However, that only made this Pokemon even more threatening as it's now able to attack from any place that its glass lies, so it can hit you from any direction. In terms of stats, this Pokemon's short, stubby legs actually makes it pretty slow, but since it's so good at counterattacking, it's got very good defenses and pretty impressive special attack as well. And for the shiny, I made its gold frame silver and changed the eyeball color, which I thought looked really nice. But now let's get into the second Pokemon. But before we do that, I have to take a quick second to tell y'all about today's video sponsor, Dimensionals. Dimensionals is an awesome new turn-based RPG that combines strategic decision-making with ultra-high replayability. It's a roguelike where you command a small group of 3 heroes as you battle across dimensions, facing increasingly harder challenges and collecting new heroes along the way. Now, if you're watching this channel, you likely already enjoy these types of games, but Dimensionals has a lot to offer that's going to make you like it even more. First of all, it's got a super charming art style where everything looks like an early 2000s cartoon, so it's super nostalgic and fun to look at. Also, the heroes you collect in the game have a ton of personality and vary wildly from each other. Like, here's Arachnabro, a tiny spider controlling a large dark golem, and here's Magmama, who's 8 feet of pure matriarchal magma. And I know this game is very stylized and has some humorous designs, but don't let that trick you into thinking this game is easy, because it is not. The levels in this game, and in particular the bosses, are genuinely challenging, and because it's a roguelike, your playthrough of these levels are different every time, so your strategy and creativity are going to matter a lot. Which for me is a huge plus, because you end up getting a really good sense of accomplishment as you progress through the game, which is honestly rare in this genre. But don't just take my word for it, you can play Dimensionals right now by using the link in my description or the pinned comment. It supports the channel, and Dimensionals is a genuinely good game that I really do think you're going to like. So if you're interested at all, again, link in the description or pinned comment. Big thank you to Dimensionals for sponsoring today's episode, but now now let's get right back into it. Because today's second Pokemon will be for Forest. I'm glad you liked Wizzelp in the last episode, but hopefully you like your own Pokemon even more. So as always, let's start by getting the power level of your Pokemon, and you are going to be a Convergent Evolution. That's cool. And it means that now we have to spin this wheel to see what generation of Pokemon we're making a Convergent for, and it's Gen 1. That's super classic. And it means that now we spin this wheel that has every single Gen 1 Pokemon on it, and we got Cloyster. That's one of the more unique Pokemon from Gen 1, so this should be fun. Now let's see what new typing we'll be giving to this Convergent Cloyster. Your first type is the Bug type. That is weird. It's always hard to do Bug type Convergence, and Bug Grass type. That's weird, yeah. And the last step before we see which Pokemon looks like, let's see if it has an X Factor, and none this time. The first stage of your Pokemon is Scuttler, the Trap Pokemon. This Pokemon uses its natural plant-like armor to protect itself from predators. If it ever feels in danger, it will instantly snap itself shut, and if anything happens to be inside of it when that happens, it will be lost forever. Because anything that enters this Pokemon's body gets rapidly digested, so you better think twice about that before you go near it. When exposed to a Leaf Stone, it would evolve into Clampster. If you can't tell, this Pokemon's real body is a very small flying insect, and the rest of its body is its protective shell. And the main way this Pokemon hunts is by pretending to be very weak and vulnerable before running away back into its protective shell, hoping that prey chases after it. Because if they do, they'll get close enough for this Pokemon to bite down on them, at which point it's already over. In terms of stats, this Pokemon is incredibly defensive, but it does suffer in the speed category. And for the shiny, of course we had to go with a reference to the original Cloyster, because it's always awesome when Pokemon does that. But now let's get into the third Pokemon. And this one will be for Noodly Doo. Of course you have a chance to get a custom Pokemon. Everyone does. In fact, you're getting one right now. So alright Noodly, let's start by getting the power level of your Pokemon, and you are going to be a Legendary. That's obviously awesome and super rare. Now Legendary Pokemon usually don't evolve, but we do still spin this wheel where you have a very small chance to, but you didn't get any this time. Now let's see what typing this Legendary Pokemon's going to be. Your first type is the Dragon type. That is awesome, especially for a Legendary. And Dragon Ghost type. That is absolutely sick. And the last step before we see which Pokemon looks like, let's see what its X Factor is going to be, and it is a Corrupted form. This Pokemon is absolutely awesome. I'm super excited for this one. Your Pokemon is Mazaturna, the Psychopomp Pokemon. This Pokemon is known to carry the souls of the dead, transferring them from this world to the next. And it does this by absorbing souls into the orbs on its body before carrying them across dimensions. However, legend says that souls that are super determined not to pass on can actually break free of this Pokemon's orbs and escape back into the world, but as ghost types. That's right, this Pokemon is the origin of all ghost types, at least according to the legend. And it was perhaps a legend of this magnitude that caught the attention of a distant unknown cosmic legendary, one who saw attacking this Pokemon as a perfect way to disrupt the natural order. And so it corrupted Mazaturna, infusing it with the cosmic type and filling it with an insatiable hunger for souls. That's right, this Pokemon now has no desire to help souls pass on, but instead wants to absorb as many as possible, turning this once simple ferryman into a harbinger of doom. In terms of stats, this Pokemon is terrifying across the board, but particularly in its special attack. And for its shiny, I made its red energy turn blue and its gold armor turn silver, which I thought turned out absolutely sick. But now let's get into the fourth Pokemon. And this one will be for Sam Scallon. Happy birthday. And of course, we'll start by getting the power level of your Pokemon, and you are going to be regular.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Now let's see how many times your Pokemon can evolve, and you are going to get one, which makes you a 2-stage evolution line. Now let's see what typing your Pokemon's going to be. Your first type is going to be the Fighting type. That's good. I think we could use some more of those. And Fighting Grass type. Interesting. And the last step before I see which Pokemon looks like, let's see if it has an X Factor, and none this time. The first stage of your Pokemon is Pawnuts, the Armored Twin Pokemon. This Pokemon actually consists of 2 separate creatures, but the bond between them is so strong that they're only considered one Pokemon. The 2 spend their entire lives together and get so good at fighting side by side that they actually end up incredibly powerful, especially for a first stage. And they're also super heroic, using their high level of skill to protect smaller weak Pokemon from larger bullies. At level 40, they would evolve into P-Knight. This Pokemon's body is actually controlled by 8 different separate Pawnuts. They all control the Pokemon's body in perfect unison, making for an incredibly unique and incredibly powerful warrior. However, if this Pokemon is is hit with a devastating enough attack, its body can actually split apart, leaving the 8 paw nuts on their own. But these Pokemon never give up, so they'll quickly reform themselves back into a P-Knight if you give them enough time. In terms of stats, P-Knight is a very defensively minded Pokemon, but it also has really good speed. However, its offenses are less than stellar. And for the shiny, I went with this dark red and gray to look more like an evil knight. But that's gonna do it for today's episode, y'all. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe before you go. And if you want to see more episodes just like this one, there's a bunch in this playlist. I'm about to get right back at making some awesome custom Pokemon, so I'll see y'all in the next episode. But until then, peace.